In order for you to actually be a real business, you have to figure out how to remove yourself from that. If you are buying, how much money do you have to put down? How are you going to fund the deal? All of those things. If you make them feel heard and valued and respected, they're likely going to buy. And at the end of that, like, you're trying to get referrals, you're trying to get reviews, you're trying to put yourself in a position where people know your name, or at least are talking about your name, even in rooms you're not in.
All right, welcome to another episode of Expanding Local. Today I am here with Melissa Hostetler. She is the founder of Blue Collar Business Advisors, which helps entrepreneurs and investors buy and sell blue collar businesses. Melissa, it's great to have you today.
I am happy to be here, Will.
Awesome. So, could you give yourself a little more of a better introduction than I just did?
I mean, I guess I can. It's all about like fluffing your ego at that point. So I'll give you some accolades and then we're going to dive into actually what really matters, because none of this stuff that I tell you is actually going to matter. But I've been on the cover of Evolution magazine as a top power player under 40, written 10 books. I've been on over 300 podcasts, been on TV, toured with Les Brown, all of the good stuff, the fun stuff, everything that I am just incredibly passionate about.
Perfect. And what brought you into this space?
So I actually had my own consulting business. I ended up selling it to a client as a list or a book of business is what we consider it. And then I had a non-compete and had to go find something else. Ended up building that to 120 employees and also selling that off, and then started helping friends and family buy and sell businesses, and have continued that for nearly 20 years.
And what got you focused in blue collar specifically?
That's like, so I grew up in a town of 237 people. That's not missing any zeros. But we only did blue collar. So we only did like blacksmiths, automotive, lumber, like really anything that you could think of that was extremely hardcore, physical, demanding, emotional, exhausting, like all of that kind of stuff. And so I just grew up around that. And it's not to say that I wanted to get into that, because I'm white collar, but I'm doing things inside of the blue collar world. So I'm very familiar with it.
Perfect. Um, so you're in the world of buying and selling. What are some common misconceptions that business owners don't really understand?
I think the biggest thing is really how much you pay yourself. So be cognizant of how much that you are actually paying yourself, and then how you're getting customers. So you and I talked about this a little bit before the podcast, is we're very specific about who our demographic is, how we message to that demographic, and also what the message portrays for them to buy or to move on and go to some other business that's relative to ours. And I think that's really important, is because a lot of people open the floor and have whoever as a customer, but when you like are very specific about your messaging and your core values and your belief system, and you're clear to the customer that should be yours, then it's a lot easier to have better margins and lower overhead, and also like stay in business longer.
So you've been in the industry for 20 years. What have you seen change, whether it's like a specific trade like HVAC, plumbing, electrical? What are some like trends you've seen and changes over time?
One of the biggest changes is the membership program. So it used to be before, like HVAC, if you called an HVAC guy out to your house, you were just simply, fixing your air conditioner or heating, or AC ducts or whatever. But now they offer like a membership program. And I think this is really, really key component of a successful business, because it elevates the business in terms of how much the business is worth, but it also elevates the business in how much service they're putting out into the community and how much they're getting back in return for those referrals that they get. So adding any type of membership or continuity program to your business in any capacity is always going to be a win for the customer and for the business.
How many trades are able to offer some sort of membership program, and are there any that code hasn't been cracked yet?
I don't think it's, are there any industries that it can't be done, because it can be done in every industry. But what I think is, can the owner handle what it takes to have a membership program? And that's ultimately what it comes down to, is the owner's leadership capacity and how much they're integrating technology in their business. So could I do that with AI? I could, but I won't. And that's by choice. But Should an HVAC or plumbing or pool company or landscaping or any of those like do it? Yes, they should. And they should do it for a multitude of reasons. But the biggest reason is to keep the guys busy, to keep the cash flow coming, and to keep the evaluation continuing to go up.
Okay. And the people that you work with who are offering membership programs or just started, like what is the reason that they didn't offer something like that before? Is it they just didn't know it existed? Like they didn't understand that that was a process? This just, it's very interesting to me. I think there's a lot of money to be made in membership programs in the trades, and I think a lot of business owners don't really even know it exists.
So I think they're too far into the day to day. And let me give you an example of this. I got a gutter company in Tampa that's on the market right now. And we didn't recognize the flaw in them not having memberships until after they went to market. And one of the largest gutter cleaning companies in the United States called as a buyer and asked, how many memberships do you have for gutter cleaning? And we're like, well, we don't even offer that. So it's very difficult for people to realize what they should be doing when they're so far in the day to day. So you have to remove yourself from the day to day, and then you can think about all the added extra benefits and memberships and cash flow that you can get outside of that.
How much revenue have you seen change or increase after introducing a program like that?
So I just dealt with a landscaping company this morning that's going to market. They've got 1.5 million in recurring revenue. And for a lot of landscapers, that would be a massive deal. That's 125,000 a month in recurring revenue. And these are on contract. So like my lawn guys, for example, they're phenomenal lawn guys, but they literally just send me an invoice and I pay it, and I pay a year in advance. So I'm like, unlike a lot of people on the block. But I think that people just don't have a system. And so it's really important that you optimize your systems, and then you can figure out how to get the systems to work where they are cash flowing the maximum per person that you're serving.
What does a membership program look like for a landscaping company? Like what are they charging for?
I mean, obviously in this particular instance, they're charging for them to come out to your property. Depends on where you are in the United States because every climate is totally different. So it could be once a week because I'm here in Florida. So once a week, they're going to edge the property, they're going to weed eat the property, they're going to mow the property, they're going to do all of the trimming on the trees, and then they're going to make sure that they blow all of the trimmings into the yard. And so I pay a certain amount per month to have them come out. Now, mine is obviously not on contract, but the business that I'm helping go to market has contracts, and those are commercial properties. So they do the same thing at a commercial level for apartment complexes, which are much, much easier to put on contract. But the problem is you have to actually get your foot in the door to get the contract for, let's just say, landscaping. But the same could be said for window washing or cleaning the interior or doing the plant division. Fun fact, in attorneys' offices and other office buildings where there's plants, those plants are live and they're actually leased. So the attorneys lease these plants every month and have someone else come in and water them and other like just take care of the plants.
Huh. I did not know that.
Yeah, they're on a 2-year lease.
Is there a difference between the effectiveness of this working in like low income areas versus high income areas? Does it work everywhere? Or is there like a geographical advantage?
I think that's a good question because when you say low income areas, I'm not sure that people are going to be able to have somebody cut their lawn in the first place. So they're probably not going to have somebody wash their windows either and or clean their house or whatever. So you're going to have to be in a medium income community and or higher, where these like everyday accessory add-ons to your already existing monthly expenses is going to be something that can be managed and maintained over a period of time. Like I've cut my lawn guys for 4 years, so I'm very happy with them. But I don't mind paying that extra for them to do it because I'm not going to do it. So in order for me to pay them, I must get paid, and I must get paid a large sum of money in order to add on all of these extra services to my household.
Definitely. Um, I kind of want to go into diligence. And in my notes here, it says you have a free 95 question due diligence checklist on your website. Is that still there? Should have checked it.
It's not, but I can add it. It's not a big deal.
No worries. what is kind of your process for doing your diligence?
There's so many things that need to be integrated into diligence. So it starts with the management and then the operations, the technology. It goes down to the first in line, the field managers, the operations managers, the office managers, all of those. And then we walk into how do the financials look? How does the memberships look? How clean are the books? Then we walk into marketing. What is it taking to acquire a customer? How long does it take to acquire a customer? What is the cost of acquiring a customer? And then the longevity of the customer. What's the lifestyle or the lifeline? And also, like, how much do these people spend on average? So that's marketing. We break it down into like all different kinds of categories so that we can learn everything about the business. So we would even talk about like equipment, like what are the VIN numbers, how much mileage, when do they need to be replaced, when were they maintenance? And all of these things can be done in every business. So if you bought a gym, you'd ask the same questions because you want to be able to depreciate some of the assets, but you also want to know when is the next time I need to buy something that's going to affect the operations of the business.
How many of these businesses have that information ready before you start working with them?
I start working with them and then we get into it. So it can take 2 to 3 weeks for somebody to compile all 95 questions just simply because they're not prepared for someone to ask that many questions. But that's also really important because if you were to put together these 95 questions in advance, you would know what it takes to maximize the exit of your business, whether it was blue collar or something else.
What are the most difficult ones that you've seen business owners struggle with, just in terms of like tracking things?
Okay, so what most successful business owners do is they mix their personal and their business together. And so they'll take like money out of their business to pay for their personal health insurance or their personal vehicle or their personal gas or eating out or any type of IVF treatments I've seen recently, McLaren's, like boats, literally anything you can imagine that these people are taking out just to mitigate taxes. I'm not anti mitigating taxes because there are legal loopholes that you can use to mitigate taxes. What I'm saying is try not to mix your business and personal because you break the corporate veil when you do that. And so any reason that you had for opening an LLC or an S corp or a C corp automatically like disintegrates and all of your personal assets are on the line if you were to get sued or get in trouble and lose a lawsuit.
Have you ever seen that happen? Like with
Yes.
how
Yep, it's terrible.
how common is that?
I think it's a lot more common than people think, but I think it's also because people are so sue happy. So it's like this one little thing, like, oh, I'm gonna sue you. Like, for example, my neighbor, he had somebody come out and power wash his driveway. And for whatever reason, the guy hit a rock very close to his front door and the front door shattered. But the front doors of these homes are $22,000. So he asked the power washer, like, I mean, this guy probably making $800 power washing the driveway, maybe not even that. And he's like, okay, well, you're gonna have to replace the front doors. And the guy's like, well, I don't have insurance. And it's like, well, that's still going to be your responsibility. So, fortunately for this homeowner, we're in a place where we have insurance and we also have money. So it wasn't too hard for him to replace the doors and then figure it out later. I had a similar situation with my Lamborghini that got totaled. Like I had to pay for that up front and to figure it out later. So, but that's not always the case for people. Like there are people that are cash poor and there are people that are struggling to keep cash flow going in their business. And so if you're one of those businesses, it's important that you have insurance. It's important that you protect your assets. It's important that you build out your business so that you are mitigating yourself away from any type of liabilities, whether it be legal or taxes or anything else.
So it sounds like insurance is super important. Are there any have you heard of any cases where there's a policy and like the person who purchased the insurance like thought they were covered for something and then that thing happened and then it like they weren't covered for that specific event? Is that common or? Not really.
It can be common. So most of the time, it just comes down to the business owner not reading the fine print of their insurance policy. So, for example, in Illinois, I had a case where, and I'm not an attorney or an accountant or anything like that. So let's make that clear. This is not any type of advice. But I had a gentleman that I was working with, and one of his guys, he bought a truck for, but he had the insurance on the truck. So the guy was driving the truck for the day during the weekend when he wasn't working, and he had an OWI. And the OWI, he literally hit the city's light pole and totaled it out. Well, the city took the stance like the business is responsible for replacing the light pole. But the problem was that the insurance company read anybody that was in a DUI or OWI position would not be paid out on this insurance policy, and the business would be responsible for whatever damages occurred. So you know the city's not going to back down, and they're going to want their stuff fixed ASAP, which is of course what happened. It came out of the person with the insurance policy's pocket because the guy that he bought the truck for didn't have any money to begin with.
Okay. And does that, because I think this is kind of like your stance. Again, I should have confirmed this stuff before the call, but build businesses with assets, not personal brands. Does that like
Yes.
carry over, and can you kind of go through that?
Yeah, so I don't have people being a problem being the face of the brand. So like obviously I own a company called Blue Collar Business Advisors, but I am representing that by being here today. So it's the same with, let's just say, Tommy Mello. Tommy Mello owns A1 Garage Stores. Everyone knows that company. It's worth over $100 million. He sold off a portion of it, but Tommy Mello still shows up every day and does ads or does giveaways or does something to integrate himself into the community so that A1 continues to grow for the investors in the private equity group that bought it. So when I say like don't be a brand, I'm saying don't be a Les Brown, don't be a Tony Robbins, don't be a Deepak Chopra, don't be like a guy that has a brand, because we see this in that financial guru. I can't remember his name,
Dave Ramsey?
but he has a, yeah, like he has now people trying to take over his podcast because he can't get out. So he's like locked into his own brand, and you'll see like his daughter and I don't know if it's his son-in-law or like just a psychologist like take over the podcast from time to time because yeah, he can't get out. So
Yeah.
you have to be able to get out. Like get out.
Do you think, okay, so this is actually, I'm kind of asking this selfishly. Do you think it's
Okay.
necessary to, do you think it's necessary to like tie yourself to the business to start things off, or do you think you should try to keep it from start to finish as like separate as possible, if that makes sense?
That's such a tough one because a lot of people that start up blue collar businesses or really any business in general have to tie themselves to the business for a period of time. And I think that's only right and fair. And I say that because most of the time the money to start the business is coming from a personal W-2 job or a side hustle or something like of that nature. There are very few instances where someone is coming from a W-2, very high level executive job and buying a business. It's not to say it doesn't happen, but for the majority of businesses, they're started up on hustle side money. And so I think that there's no other choice but to tie yourself to the business. Now, you can do that, and I don't have an issue with that, but your idea is to scale to sell using systems, operations, people, and just protocols.
In terms of dollar amount roughly, what do you think the penalty is for people who scale a business to, great heights and throughout the entire time their personal brand is massively attached to it and a major part of it? How much does that reduce like sale price uh, and the value?
A lot, substantially, a lot. Because if you're the guy and I have to sell your business and you're the guy and the new buyer has to come in and say, like, I'm going to work 40 hours or 120 hours or whatever is unreasonable and unrealistic, it's going to be very difficult to push that off as a real business. And so, in order for you to actually be a real business, you have to figure out how to remove yourself from that. Now, the only way that that would and could work is if someone already owned an established business and wanted to buy another business where they were adding on to their already existing services, and they were going to use that to propel themselves into a larger exit. That could totally work, but there's just different circumstances where that makes sense and where it doesn't. And a lot of the times it doesn't.
Is zero down a myth?
100%. There is no SBA loan that is going to get you a 0% down. There's no insurance that's going to let you get by without paying. There is like, if you're trying to buy a real business with real cash flow from real people who have built these businesses, there's no reason you should be asking them to hold the bag for zero money down. Like, it's not going to happen. They would rather close their doors and be done for good than give you a business for zero money down. They don't know you. You're a stranger, and honestly, a cheap one at that.
How much, hopefully this isn't a dumb question, but like since zero down is a myth, because I've heard that so many,
Over and over.
um, how
Mhm.
do like first time investors, like young buyers, someone who's looking to like acquire a business, and I think you recommend route-based service operations. Um, in that scenario, I could be wrong, but what what is kind like what do they need to do beforehand to be able to break into their first, deal?
So there's two things, right? All right. So let me talk about a recent buyer that came along. He owns a mosquito company. He has 50,000 cash. He is approved by the SBA for 150,000. So in this case, he can buy something smaller. So he's going to buy more than likely the plant division that deals with the attorney's plant. Um, that are leased, because that makes sense to him. Like, he can afford to buy that. It's already part of what he does in terms of like blue collar, and like it's a very small way for him to get into the acquisition space. So he's not bringing a ton of money down, right? So when you buy a house, you have to bring at least 2 to 5% down for your first acquisition. The same is true here. It's typically 10% down on the SBA. So if he were to do $50,000 down, he could buy up to 500,000, but he's already been pre-approved for 150. So we have to stick with 150, but that also gives him working capital. And so that's a great thing. So you can start with a little bit of money and you can work your way up. You can also just get creative. So for example, my brother and I bought a meat packing facility that was vacant for a long period of time, and we literally gutted the whole thing out and made it into storage units, and that's our residual every month. So these are in small towns, so you can get creative. You can get by with a small amount of money down, or if you really do have a lot of money down, let's say 500 to $1 million down, you can tie that up and go with the small business admin 7A loan. But there's a lot of contingencies on the loan. So you may have to get a life insurance policy. You may have to tie up your personal assets like your home. You may have to pass a certain credit score, typically it's 680, and also prove that the cash was not taken from somewhere that wasn't legal. Um, but I think anybody in any bracket can learn how to build better businesses and bigger businesses, but they have to start with where they are. So, for my own example in real estate, for example, I bought my first house for 47,500 cash, and then I rehabbed it, and I was very involved in that process. But as you get to like larger projects, bigger businesses, more real estate, you're not going to be as involved.
Perfect. Everyone kind of, I think in the past thought that AI was going to replace the manual labor jobs,
Yeah.
and obviously they were all wrong, and we've seen a lot of private equity money flowing into this space. And correct me if I say anything incorrect here, because you're definitely the expert here. Um, a lot of PE money coming into the space. Do you see that trend changing or leveling off in the future, or do you think it's just going to keep getting, bigger, bigger, more competitive, more money flowing into that space?
Okay, so I do think that there's going to be more money flowing into the space with PE. I think the best example of this is waste management. So, if you're not familiar with the story of waste management, basically they went into all the small towns and they like bought out all the tiny garbage companies, and they ended up expanding waste management across the country, one company at a time. And so is AI going to take over? Mm, On a larger scale, yes. On a smaller scale, the smaller people are going to be eaten up by private equity and or medium-sized investor groups. And then the smaller guys are going to have a very hard time struggling and surviving because they don't have the same capacity. Now, this can work in small towns, but it's not going to work in large towns like Orlando or LA or any of those places because they're not going to be as competitive as the guy that has a lot more resources at his disposal.
And how, like, is it possible for these smaller companies, businesses, blue collar businesses to become more competitive or like even compete, or is it almost like impossible with the amount of money that the, you know, companies that are being backed by private equity money have?
I think if you're going to compete, you got to be strategic about it. So, for example, a lot of people are brokers. Where my specific thing is I only work exclusively with blue collar and I don't get paid on the back end a percentage. I get paid on the front end a flat fee. So you have to figure out like how are you going to differentiate yourself in a world of the same? And how are you going to message that to the audience that you want to be your clientele? Can they survive? Yes, they can, but they have to be strategic about every single message that they put out, every single customer that they bring in the door, and every single dollar that they put into the bank account.
Perfect. Do you not like boring businesses? That's another keyword I've heard a lot. I think from Cody Sanchez. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So Cody and I live on two different planets. What is a boring business, right? Because every business should be boring if they're successful. So, this whole concept of a boring business, if we're talking about laundromats, no, I would never buy one. If we're talking about car washes, I would also never buy that. I would never buy a gun shop. I would never buy anything like that. Why? Well, so let's take laundromats, for example. The majority of the money that comes in the door through a laundromat is cash money. Who is putting cash on their taxes? Nobody. So how are you going to maximize your exit? You're not. But beyond that, let's talk about the longevity of a commercial machine. Have you ever fixed a commercial washing machine? No, neither have I. Are we going to learn that? No, we're not. So here's the thing. These commercial laundry machines are very difficult to fix. And because they're used so many times every single day, they have to be replaced every 5 years. And if they're not, they become a fire hazard. So your insurance automatically goes up. But that's not also the problem. The problem lies in a lot of these laundromats are in areas where there's no security because it's low income. So now you have to have security systems in place and or you have to figure out how you're going to secure your assets in a way that makes sense. So all of that is money out the door. It's not money in your pocket. But let's move on to car washes. So car wash, same thing. Like, have you ever fixed a car wash? No, neither have I. Like, we're not. Who is going to fix a car wash, right? You have to be very specialized in order to deal with the mechanics of a machine that has so many parts. And while you're waiting for those parts to come, which by the way, each sprinkler head is $12,500. So you better have that in cash if you're going to order the part or an Amex card with available credit. You have to wait an undetermined period of time to get that part. Once the part comes in, then you can fix it, and that's going to take however long it takes, and that's only if that works. So now you have not only spent money on the parts, you have also waited an undetermined period of time while your business is completely shut down and you're not making money. So is that a viable business option? Not in my opinion, but in other people's boring businesses, it is. So I don't know what a boring business is. I'm not into businesses that are all about the cash and don't put it on the taxes because there's no way to track it. And I'm also not about shutting down my business and not making cash because that doesn't make sense.
Can you go through your 9-step buying and selling process?
Sure. So I don't know if this is gonna be in order. I'm just gonna say it how I have it in my head.
Go for it. Shotgun.
Okay, so obviously you and I are gonna have a conversation about what makes the most sense for you. Are you buying? Are you selling? And those are really the only two things I do. And so if you are buying, we're gonna go through what is your buy box? How much money do you have to put down? How are you going to fund the deal? All of those things. If you are selling, we're gonna go through um why now, where you're located, so I can get an idea of what industry you're in and what multiple that's going to be and if it makes sense to take you on as a client. Then we're going to sign an NDA because the non-disclosure is a really key important aspect. We're obviously disclosing EIN numbers, social security numbers, personal home addresses, business addresses, taxes, all of these things like are super confidential and very important to remain confidential. And after the NDA, you're going to sign the contract and wire a flat fee. So I have a 13-page contract. It's very straightforward. It basically says like, hey, I can't guarantee that your business is going to sell or that you're going to find a business to buy. What I can guarantee is I can help you through this over a period of 9 months. And the majority of the time it works out. But again, that puts both of us in a position where we're buying into this process. It puts you in a position where you've fronted up money, and it puts me in a position where I'm on a timeline to get you what you want. But also bring experience, skills, knowledge, and longevity to the table in the terms of negotiation.
What are?
Um,
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, my bad. My bad. You keep going. You're better at talking.
No, so I think that's 3 or 4 of the steps. And then obviously the 95 questions, that's a big one because that's where there's going to be some serious time spent in getting together the 95 questions. And as a seller, I'm going to be getting that from the buyer. As the buyer, I'm going to be getting it to take your business to market. Once we have that, then we obviously move to an LOI, which is a letter of intent to purchase the business. We're going to gather that from buyers, or we're going to get it from buyers both ways in this particular instance. And then we'll put signatures on the document and move to an APA or a SPA. APA is an asset purchase agreement. There's only 2 ways to buy a business: assets or stocks. The majority of the time it's assets. And so we put together these contracts, and you should do this through your attorney. I'm not an attorney or an accountant or a broker or any of that. And that's going to outline what is the timeline, how much money are you going to put into escrow, when are you planning to close, how much time are you going to put in due diligence, and then we actually move into due diligence and start doing all of those things. Then once all of it gets funded and we go to closing, we go to the transition, and congratulations, you own or you have sold your business.
Perfect. And so your business model, you're helping these people like buy or sell a business. Is there like, so we're kind of talking about like recurring revenue, like different programs that home service businesses can, employ to make some MRR. Is there any, like in your industry, is there anything like that that you can offer to your clients, past or current?
Yeah, there is. I don't. And I don't do it by choice. So Cody Sanchez, for example, does. She does courses, she does books, she does webinars, she does classes, whatever. Layla and Alex Hormozy are the same way. They have the Vegas office. You go there, whatever, and you pay for the membership. I don't do that because I'm very one-on-one. So you're coming to me because you want to get shit done. So that's my job. I'm going to take you from the front line to the finish line. And so I'm going to dive into the details, and we're going to move all the way through the transition. But I'm not going to sell you a course or a book or any of that stuff because I don't want to do it, and I don't have time to do it, and it's not worth my time.
And are you still not running like any ads? Like you're just getting clients from referrals?
Yeah, no ads. I don't do ads. I do
Love that.
referrals only, and or if someone is familiar with me on Facebook and they trust me and they decide to choose me, then we'll go that way.
Perfect. Everybody, yeah, you guys got to choose Melissa, but I don't think we mean to say that. All right, I guess what else do we want to talk about?
I mean, I'm open to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I would probably say like the number one problem that any business owner has is moving themselves out of the business. So if you are doing something already in the business, then just write it out. Like write out what exactly it is that you're doing, or shoot a Loom video, or do something that is going to allow you to train somebody else repetitively. So you can't do different processes for the same thing. You have to do the same process every single time repeatedly. And then you train somebody else to do that. And I think a lot of people fall short because they think like, okay, well, if someone doesn't live up to my expectation or my standard, that's a false way of looking at it. Like if someone lives up to just 80% or 70% of what you're doing, that is good enough. That is why people make hundreds of millions of dollars, because they trust these people, but they verify. So spend your time verifying and trust that they're going to do it. And if they don't, at least you have a process to repeat hiring somebody else for the same position.
What is the difference between like writing out SOPs in tech versus the trades? I'd have to imagine it might be a little bit harder, but I could be wrong.
Not in tech, so I have no idea, but I would imagine that you're doing coding. So there's probably a lot of jargon in regards to like codes and stuff of that nature that would have to be put into like a manual of some kind.
I guess my question is more so like I definitely asked it the wrong way. Are the SOPs that like these business owners need to build, are they more so like on the operational side, like how to install a water heater, or or is it more on like sales, like how to approach a potential customer and like upsell, things like that? What are
All of that. So you should, from the point of contact, like, you and I made in the beginning, like, you should understand, like, how are you going to engage this person and how are you going to make them trust you? People buy on how you make them feel. So if you make them feel like heard and valued and respected, they're likely going to buy. And then you're going to have to put them through a process. So you're probably not going to be part of the entire process. You might just be the first in line to have this conversation to build the trust and rapport, but then they have to be passed to somebody else to be serviced. So you can say X tech is going to help you, or in the case of technology, our middle management is going to help you. And then they're going to service whatever the promise was. Now you need to make sure that they can service whatever the promise was, because you're not trying to promise something and not deliver on it. Um, and if you are, that's just bad business. And at the end of that, like, you're trying to get referrals, you're trying to get reviews, you're trying to put yourself in a position where people know your name, or at least are talking about your name, even in rooms you're not in. So like for myself, my name is mentioned in masterminds of all different kinds in podcast, or someone met me on the internet and they say like, hey, you should be on this. Like how you and I met actually was kind of interesting, because he was like, hey, let me just add you to my group, and then we got in the group, and you were asking for podcast guests, and I was like, hey, I'm down to help. You don't know me from Adam. So it's just like building that rapport and respect and relationship, and that has to be like how you do it all throughout the business. So you want an SOP for everything, but you don't want to be the man that delivers everything in the process.
perfect? I don't know if this is something you kind of like, I don't know if this is your wheelhouse or something you audit when you're kind of going through these businesses, but like the phones, answering the phones, having like a dedicated person in the office or some sort of answering service. um, what kind of impact do you think that has on the businesses that you're working with? Have you seen any like issues there or problems that like just drastically increased, the numbers that are important?
Yeah, I mean, for every business, no matter what kind of business you have, you need somebody that is educated, you need somebody that is friendly, you need somebody that is able to solve problems, and you need somebody that honestly is able to deal with emotional turmoil, because people are calling you to buy, and if they're not calling you to buy, they're calling you to bitch. So you're either going to deal with one of two things. So you have to be able to switch into like, I can be serious and help you through your emotional trauma and resolve this issue in a short period of time in a fair way for both the business and you, and or I'm happy to move you through the sales process, and I know that we can help you because of whatever, and then pass them on to the next person that can be a tech or whatever. But there's really only those two reasons why people are calling. And so if you are somebody that's in a bad mood, then you're going to affect the buyer. If you're somebody that is unorganized, then you're not going to be able to keep up with passing work through the system that it needs to go through, and or keeping up with the work yourself. If you're not able to communicate effectively, you're not going to be able to speak with the person. And so I'm not really a fan of AI answering the phone calls, because I think it creates unnecessary frustration. Um, Now I know why banks and insurance companies do it, and it's because they're at a scale that they want to cut labor costs, and I guess like no one's going to tell them any different. But for the main part of a service-based business, your first point of contact is your most important point of contact, and that's really a key aspect of how successful um the whole process is going to be for the person. So I've had like guys from blue collar businesses come out, like fix a toilet or HVAC or whatever. Secretary, absolutely amazing. The work ethic of the guys, absolutely horrible. My conversation with the owner, like, hey, if your frontline was as good as your service line, you'd have a totally different, standard. But that's when protocols come into place, and so it really comes down to like who is answering your phone and how knowledgeable they are.
We have one of our clients in restoration, which is like, I'd say 60-70% emergency services using
Mhm.
an AI answering service, or they were, and it just like killed their like people would listen for 15 seconds. The second it said it was AI, like hang up. And they're spending money on ads, just burning it because if someone's standing in a puddle of water in their basement, they they want to talk to a human being that's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, like how can I help, like, just talk them down. um,
Empathy. They want empathy. They want someone to hear them out. And all the computer's going to do is make them more angry. And so yeah, for service-based businesses, I think having that human to human connection and interaction is really important. And I can say that because, like, I mean, I just redid my entire house from the studs, so I'm very familiar with how these trades work. And one of the first guys that ever came into my house opened up the ceiling, because I had them take down like all the decorative ceilings and whatnot. And then he said, like, okay, I'm going to the beach for 2 weeks. And I was like, no, you're not, because the air conditioner is not going to go through the rafters. This is a 1-story house. Like, now you've put me in an emergency situation where I'm supposed to have my HVAC run on overdrive to heat or to cool the rafters. I literally fired that guy. Like, he had worked for me. I was like, it's not going to happen. So go to the beach, but you're never going to get paid what you were promised to get paid at this point, because that's not the level of service that was expected here. So from a client perspective, you do have to like make sure that there are written communication and written goals, and make sure that like everybody can make change orders, and there's just like a very smooth process to ensure like what you're asking to be done is done, and also what you need to be paid as the contractor can be paid, because your business can't function without the cash flow.
what would you say the percentage of quote unquote like the percentage of trucks and trucks that are able to sell their business for like multi-millions, like what percentage survive that race as opposed to just staying where they are?
Well, if you're a truck and a truck, you're not going to sell anything. You're going to
Yeah,
sell the
I
truck
mean,
and
like,
your tools. But if you are, so the thing that comes to mind is a company in Texas, and it's a guy that owns a HVAC and plumbing company. So he started as a Chuck in a truck, or Brandon in a truck. And Brandon literally built out his business by buying trucks off of budget and maintaining them, because he knew that they were already maintenance. So he'd buy them for 15,000 and he'd continue to add to his fleet. And eventually, he got to a 30,000 square foot warehouse and was picked up by PE. Now, the process took 9 years. So you can start as Chuck in a truck and you can build up to a specific mile marker, or in this case, he has 4 kids, so he wanted to move out of the business at this point. But there's any set of life circumstances that can move you from wanting to be in the business to saying, okay, I'm willing to let go of the business, and any dollar amount can do the same. So if someone comes with a checkbook today and says, I'm willing to offer you this, and then you can just decide to go.
what is the difference in personality that you've seen between, the Tommy Mellos of the world who scale massively and have, locations across the country, and then someone who's just kind of like they just stay at the same spot making the same, amount of money each year, like 100,000, 200,000, they're happy. Like what's the difference there in personality traits?
I don't know if it's personality traits. I really just think it comes down to like, what are your life goals? Like, what is it that you're trying to achieve in your life right now? So a lot of people want to buy as many businesses as possible, and or real estate, and or vehicles, whatever. Like, they want to buy because they're a consumer, and also they heard boring businesses make money. That's true to a certain degree, but you also have to be able to like enact SOPs and be able to handle this level of work. So I can say like I've had both experiences. So one experience I had was with 120 employees, and it was very demanding because people rely on you for, management and leadership and all of the things. And they also rely on you for building the company bigger. So buying more real estate and buying more computers and buying more everything. And that's fine. But that right now in my life isn't where I want to be. So I sold off that business, and like I just enjoy having money, having the peace of mind, having steady cash flow, being able to do what I love, the freedom that comes with that, being able to travel when I want, work with who I love, like all of these things. So like I don't know, maybe if I was in a different position I would have a different mentality, but I think it comes down to like where are you right now and what is it that you value. I value freedom and security and stability the most, and some people value other things, and so that could be money, it could be growth, it could be tangible things, and so it just comes down to like where are you and what is it that you want, and that'll all change throughout different life cycles.
At what point in your life, because you've been doing this for the last 20 years, like where did you achieve that feeling of like, okay, I'm set. I have freedom, I have security, like I'm good. What like was there like a flip that switched in your brain, or was it just kind of over time you just realized that you were there?
um I don't know if it's like a flip that switches in your brain. I think
Or a
you
switch
just,
that flipped. I think I said that wrong. Or,
yeah, a switch that flips. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think that it's like different life cycles. So I guess like I don't know, maybe like in 10 years I'll think something different and go build something wildly like much more like what Tommy Mello did, right? But I think that when you have the freedom and you start enjoying it and you have the peace of mind and you're content with it and you have, I'm not saying comfortable because no one should be comfortable. Like you should always be trying to strive to achieve something else, right? But there's like a piece of knowing like I accomplished something, a piece of knowing that I have made an impact in the community, a piece of knowing that I've been successful in my pursuits and continue to do so. I think if you are content with what you have, but striving to achieve more in terms of giving, then do that. But I can't really say it was a switch that flipped.
yeah, I messed you up on that for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not sure what's going on in this brain of mine. But so what are some like what are some resources or platforms or groups or anything that you use on a daily basis to like do what you do with these businesses? Or also resources that the businesses that you work with are using to kind of like get an edge on everything?
I would say it's not a thing that they're using, right? Because they can use Jobber, they can use a bunch of different technology of anything, and anyone can tell them that. What I would say matters the most is your relationships. So, who is it you're surrounded with, and what kind of knowledge do they have, and what kind of success have they achieved? And then, above and beyond that, like, how can you get in the room with these people and ask them the kind of questions that you want to ask them? So, some of my friends are, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But you're not going to find us in groups or any of that type of stuff. You're going to find us in living rooms like this, sitting around having a barbecue in backyards, like shooting the shit on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Like, so you have to figure out like how can you create and connect and build and just pour into, instead of like how can I take and what value can I like extrapolate from this person. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway I would give anybody is figure out who is doing what you want to do and who is making what you want to make, and like how can you just have a conversation with them, because a lot of these guys that have made a lot of money are very, very humble. They're totally willing to have a conversation with people. They'll give up their time. They'll answer questions. Like I answer my Facebook messages every day. I post about the stuff every day. Like it's really just important about more so the impact than the money.
I had a question that I forgot, but now I remember it. What are like
Okay.
different thresholds in a business that are like the most infuriating or just the hardest to get through, break through, like whether it's uh, you know, a certain amount of revenue or like whatever marker you've kind of noticed. Like what are those points and what are the worst ones and what are kind of like the best ones where things get good? Or does it always just suck?
No, it doesn't always just suck. I don't know who whoever said that was is just lying. And it's when you reach like a certain threshold, you're just genuinely happy. You love what you do. Like you love just making an impact, and you just wake up like ready to help the next person, regardless of whatever the day is going to bring you in terms of bullshit. Cause every level of success brings more bullshit. So every day is some new thing that you don't know is going to happen. But what I would say is like the first mile marker a lot of people hit is, can they stay in business for 5 years and can they make $1 million? Those are probably the number two things that are the things that people need to get past in order to even be considered any type of successful, if we're calling it that, right? Okay, so if you've been in business 5 years, then you know that you've been through some ups and downs, some highs and lows, some peaks and valleys, and it's just um figuring out how to like keep the consistency, because that's ultimately what you want to do, is keep the consistency until you are prepared and have enough resources in terms of money and in terms of just people and tools to take it to the next level. So one of my most successful clients, I would say, was stuck in this loop where he would literally go to the gym and he couldn't focus on a workout because his phone was ringing nonstop, and he couldn't service these clients because he had too many clients to service, because he didn't have any sort of way to say, should this person be a client or not be a client. And then he was in lawsuits because he wasn't delivering the things that he promised that he said he would be delivering, but he had no protection because he didn't set up anything legal for his business to be protected, much less himself. And he was also going through a divorce, so like he was already getting, strapped in that capacity, but he was just mentally, emotionally drained, but then also like physically exhausted because he couldn't do the thing that was the outlet for him to like bring himself back to some sort of normal. And so when I came into that business, like it was crazy. It was very, very crazy. And over 3 years, we moved it from insane to a 8-figure exit. But this is what you'll find a lot of times, is these people are just overwhelmed, overworked, and overstressed, and they can't get out of the day to day. They can't get out of the overthinking. They can't get out of the overstressed, and they can't just like get into a space where they can clearly think through a strategic plan to take them to the next level. So they have to bring in attorneys, accountants, advisors in some capacity, and all of these people combined together can help them like move all the pieces to create something that's like stable and secure and consistent and cash flows and allows them to remove themselves.
Yeah, that's a lot of divorce, getting sued, and that's a lot to
Yeah.
deal with. What was the turning point with that? Like how did that person kind of fix things? Was it just a slow long process or
Um, for that particular one, I was being a consultant. So I actually came in, I hired a VP of operations. I put in different people to do the things that he should have been doing, because he should have been communicating clear to the clients. He should have been, you know, discovering whatever the client's needs are. He should have been delivering on those things. And so like when you put people in place, then you also have to train them, right? So then we had to create training manuals, and the VP of ops and I became very good friends because she started as just somebody that was like part-time, paid like I think $12 an hour, did not live in the United States. She lived in St. Lucia. And, and then became a full-blown vice president of the company that did 8 figures. So it was a really crazy turnaround process, because you have to move this person out of the day to day. So go deal with your personal issues and put people in place that can deal with your business issues. And then when you are clear about your personal issues being resolved, come back into the business and be able to like do something that's going to move the company forward and be the visionary. But you can't be a visionary if you are stuck in your own pile of crap.
I love that you said that. Now I understand why you can only take on 2 to 3 clients a month to actually get shit done, which I feel like for whatever reason is pretty rare nowadays.
Yes, it's super rare. But that's also why I don't go with like, this is a one size fits all solution. Let's buy some boring businesses, zero money down. Like, all of those things are unrealistic, unattainable, and just not what I stand for. And so I'm very, very involved in the process. And I'm like very particular about let's maximize your exit and let's also like minimize the stress and pressure your people and you have.
Yeah, this feels like a Cody Sanchez hate group now.
It's not. It's not. We're just in two different worlds when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, Cody, if you're listening to this, which she definitely is, like this is definitely one of the podcasts she tunes into often. I'm sorry, we don't mean it.
Does she though?
No.
I was gonna say I've talked to her people, so she can call me. I am not afraid.
I can assure you, Tony will or Cody will not be listening to this podcast.
So here's the thing. I think this is my biggest biff about Cody. So I read two different books. One was hers and one was a different guy's. I forget what the guy's name was because he's not as popular. But in this guy's book, he says, like, hey, I bought 17 businesses and this is how I do it. And I was like, okay, that's very realistic. Like, someone could manage, function, and be at peace with 17 businesses. I don't think that's problematic. Cody, on the other hand, says, I bought 171 businesses or 1,000 businesses. And I'm like, no, you didn't. You're in your 30s. Unless we're considering a business, the LLC you put your car in, the LLC you put your house in, the LLC you put your dog in, you did not fucking buy that many businesses. Like, so I want to be the person that is like transparent and realistic and tell people like how this truly works. Because unless you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth and you have an unlimited amount of cash flow and resources and relationships, and I'm not saying she does or doesn't, right? Because I feel like her and I were born both very, very poor, but we just took two different life paths. And I'm not about buying hundreds of thousands of businesses because it's just a very terrible way to live your life. But she also says, like, I don't want kids. I, on the other hand, do. Like, I value family and I value all of those things. And so it comes down to the very thing that I talked about for a long period of time on the podcast. Is like, where are you in your life? What is it that you value? What is it you believe? Where do you want to spend your time?
Definitely. I think so. We're coming up on the hour. Where is a good place for people to find more about you? Like, reach out if they're interested in your services, and then also kind of the types of people that you want to reach out to you, and maybe some people aren't quite ready yet for your caliber of services.
I would just say, like, reach out to me if you think you are. I'm always happy to connect. There's no way for me to say, like, if you are or aren't on a podcast, right? So that's going to take a conversation between the two of us. But you can find me at bluecollarbusinessadvisors.com. My cell phone is listed there as well as my email. So the 9 steps is also listed in order. And then I mean, anything else, like you can find me on Facebook. That's where I spend the majority of my time giving out just invaluable pieces of advice for anybody that wants to scale, buy, or sell a business.
Perfect. It was seriously great having you on. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you.